We all set, Michael?
Yeah, look at this. Okay, yeah, we're all set. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. We've talked about the Ridge Road. We've talked about the canal. We're working our way from the ridge down through. And it seems like every major throughway has involved Albion one way or the other. Because going from the ridge down here, okay, that was the first major artery. And then the Erie Canal came through. And that was a big deal for Albion and for Orleans County in general. Now we've done the canal. The next thing is the trolley, the precursor to the railroad. Then the railroad came through. And then after the railroad, we go south of Batavia to the thruway. So you can work your way down in the kinds of transportation, just going through the history of Orleans County. Today I want to talk to you about the trolley. As early as the 1840s, they were talking about railroad companies. And at the time, trolleys were considered part of the railroad companies because it ran on rails. In 1843, at a convention of delegates representing railroad companies between the Hudson River and Buffalo, in Albany in 1843, a resolution was adopted to run 2 daily lines between Buffalo and the Hudson River in 24 hours, including stops. That was a main big deal, 25 hours. It took 6 hours to travel between Rochester and Buffalo. This is in 1843. In the winter months, trains in Albany required 2 days. Detroit to Chicago took 39 hours. 80 miles by a railroad, 120 by stage, and 60 by steamboat, and the fare being $8.50. Today you think, okay, that's under $10. But $10 was a fortune in the 1840s. And so this is the kind of background in what was the travel modes in the 1800s. The earliest efforts to construct an electronic urban railway through this area started around the turn of the century, so just after 1900. Discussion of forming railway that ran from Batavia to Olcott through Medina were amongst the very first plans for a trolley system. But the 1.7-mile Albion Electric Railway was the only successful line in these early years. So the Albion line was the number one line when they set up a railway, the trolley. Chartered in 1905, the Buffalo, Lockport, and Rochester Railway was a combination of the Albion and Lockport Railway, the Albion and Rochester Railway, and the Albion Electric Railway. The Albion Electric Railway was the trolley that first ran in Albion from one side to the other. So we were kind of the cutting edge when it came to transportation. The local builder, George D. Harris, built many new homes in Albion and redesigned others, including the former Swan Library and the Trolley Depot. The Trolley Depot is the building behind the Swan Library, where Pat Camerata lives now. That was the depot for the trolley. That's where people went in to get their tickets and boarded on the trolley, and so that was kind of the hub in Albion. The Buffalo, Lockport, and Rochester Railway Company purchased the vacant lot in the rear of the Swan Library in January 1909 as an office site. A 2-story sandstone building was to be erected. The ground floor was to house the waiting room, ticket, freight, and express offices. The road superintendent, general manager, and train master were to have offices on the second floor. And it was a home in 1963. So it was converted depot. This is the first time I found what the building was. It was sandstone. And it told the ground floor was to house the waiting room, ticket, freight office, and express office. The road superintendent, general manager, and train master were to have offices on the second floor. So they had it laid out who was to have what in there. The Albion and Lockport Railway was incorporated September 15th, 1904 to build a line from State Street in Albion to East Avenue in Lockport. The Albion and Rochester had been formed 11 days earlier. So it was all around the same time period in 1904 that these railways were formed. There were several early attempts to build an electric interurban railway connecting Rochester and Buffalo starting in 1902 with the Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and Rochester. None of these attempts resulted in any significant construction except for the Albion Electric Railway, which constructed 1.7 miles of track through the village of Albion. So we were the first. On June 23rd, 1905, the Buffalo, Lockport, and Rochester Railway was chartered as a result of the combination of the Albion and Lockport Railway, the Albion and Rochester Railway, and the Albion Electric Railway. The new owners of the company were predominantly Canadian, and it was rumored that a connection to Toronto would soon be considered. The BL&R ran for 54 miles from a connection with the International Railway Company in Lockport to a connection with the Rochester Railways on Lyle Avenue. The route closely followed the Erie Canal and the New York Canal's Falls Road for most of its length. The first section of the BL&R opened on September 3rd, 1908, from Rochester to a point just west of Albion, and by November 17th had reached Lockport. So we were right on the main drag for that new railway. The new railway could not reach downtown Rochester because it was unable to secure permission to install a diamond to cross the New York Central Railroad's Charlotte Beach at Lyle Avenue. So they couldn't get permission to cross it. So it kind of dead-ended there. The New York State Public Service Commission intervened and permission was granted to construct the crossing in May 1910. The BL&R served the interurban terminal at the corner of Court and Exchange Streets until 1914, when the terminal was moved to nearby Erie Railroad Station. A connection could be made to the Rochester, Syracuse, and Eastern interurban line. Thousands of passengers were attracted to the BL&R's swift local service, cheaper fares that competed directly with the nearby steam roads serving the same areas. So it was a major hookup. It was major through Albion, but connecting on either side of Albion. It was early on, too. In 1904, the Lockport Journal has a headline, Albion, April 14th. Machinery, tools, and material are on hand to commence the work of extending east and west the Albion Electric Railway. The road through Albion was built last year with the exception of one block in front of the courthouse square. I don't know why they didn't build that, but the work will be commenced soon. The annual meeting of the company will be held at this place April 22nd. And that was news from the Lockport Journal in 1904. So we were headline news. In the Western Electrician news, June 28, 1902. The Albion Electric Railway Company has been incorporated with $30,000 capital stock to operate an electric road 3 miles long in Albion, New York. So we were in a statewide publication, the Western Electrician, because we had the railway going through Albion, which amazed me when I found it. We were headline news. So there.
There you go, Dana.
Yeah, we were the big deal. Excuse me. Work was begun, this is in the Street Railway Journal, okay, July to December 1904. Work was begun a few days ago at Albion, New York, on what is to be known as the Buffalo, Lockport, and Rochester Electric Railway, which is to run from Rochester to Lockport, where it will make connections with electric lines running to Tonawanda and Buffalo and Niagara Falls. This road, which was incorporated under the name of the Albion Electric Railway, was to have run only from Albion to Lockport, but it has since been decided to extend it to Rochester, and operating agreements have been made with the International Traction Company with lines running to Buffalo and Niagara Falls. So what we started expanded east and west, so other people could have a railway too, not just us.
Thanks to us.
Yes, thanks to Albion. The cars of the new road are to enter Rochester over Lyle Avenue tracks of the Rochester Railway Company and will carry their passengers to the Four Corners. It is expected that the road will be laid at least from Rochester to Brockport by fall, when that part of the line will be operated. Throughout its whole length, the new line will parallel the Falls Road of the New York Central. It will run on its own right-of-way, except through the streets of the villages, towns along the route. The line is on the north side of the steam railroad between it and the canal. The new company has practically obtained the right-of-way from Rochester to Lockport and has permission to go through the business streets of the villages and towns. The places through which it will pass are South Greece, Spencerport, Adams Basin, Brockport, Holly, Fancher, Albion, Eagle Harbor, Knowlesville, Medina, Middleport, Gasport, and Lockport. The construction of the road is now being supervised by A.T. Tomlinson, who represents J.G. White and Company of New York. The road is being financed by the Transit Finance Company of Philadelphia. So this started in Albion.
Where was it located? It was between there and the canals, so where?
Well, I think probably it was essentially through Albion initially. State Street, right, where the trolley ran.
Okay.
Like the trolley building right behind Swan Library.
Okay.
So State Street was the main drag, and that's why part of it today is still wider.
Okay.
Okay, because the tracks ran down through the middle of State Street. And as you look at it, that street is a lot wider than the other streets going east and west. But that's because the track ran out through
It just ran east and west on State Street? That was it?
that was the main drag through the village.
Okay.
Okay, and then it extended on beyond that.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. So, Dee, did it share with the car, or had it share with the cars?
Yeah, but you gotta understand the cars came after the railway.
Right, so.
But that's why it's wider too, because the cars were
Cars
going
would
down
go,
through. Yeah.
So
The tracks went down the middle of the street,
Right,
and in front of the courthouse and the Presbyterian church, there were sidings. That's where the sidings were in the village.
yeah. Because you were right in the village.
So they could bypass
Right,
in front of the courthouse and the Presbyterian church.
yeah. The Albion and Lockport Railway was incorporated September 15th, 1904, to build a line from State Street in Albion to East Avenue in Lockport. So they appropriated money for that particular stretch of the railway. The Albion and Rochester had been formed 11 days earlier. So the one going towards Rochester had been 11 days earlier, and then they did the one going the other direction. So they were both going about the same time, construction. The Genesee and Orleans Railway Company was incorporated to build 27 miles of railway from Batavia via Oak Orchard to Lake Ontario. It was backed by George W. Aldridge and Charles H. Babcock of Rochester and Charles E. Hunt of Albion, and capitalized for $375,000. A lot of money.
It should be about $1 million today.
Oh, at least, yeah.
Okay.
This, as well as Buffalo, Rochester, Niagara Falls Electric Railway, were never built, although the G and O obtained franchises in Elba, Albion, Carleton, and Batavia. So there were other franchises, but they didn't get funded. But this one did. Mr. Towsey was an early motorman on the Rochester and Eastern until the Buffalo, Lockport, and Rochester opened in 1908. On his first trip with Joe Hoag as conductor, they approached a road crossing between Medina and Albion as a new Buick with 3 Orleans County politicians drove up. The auto stopped and then moved onto the track when the trolley was only 10 feet away. The trolley cut the Buick in 2 pieces, and when the crew walked back to see how the 3 men were, they found them bruised and one had a broken nose. Nothing more serious. Some parts of the Buick came up through the floor of the trolley. It was in such bad order that they stopped at the Lyle car barns and changed for another car before proceeding to Rochester. So they had an accident, got another car, went on to Rochester. Had a collision with the trolley.
Politicians think they could be.
Well, they had important things to do. Mike Ryan, owner of the stone quarries around Orleans County, also owned a Model T Ford until the night he lost his Ford and his life. Harry Harner was conductor on the trolley that evening, which left Fancher Station for Rochester at the same time that Mike drove off in his Ford for Richards, which was the next stop 4 miles east. We will never know why Mike drove so fast unless he wanted to race the trolley. And when he drove in front of the trolley at Richards, they stopped and the crew found Mike in the wreckage. They saw that the hours were numbered. So he died there. Now, it doesn't say specifically, but it sounds like he was trying to cross before the trolley got there. And he didn't make it. It has a picture. The house in the photo of Stop 21 was empty, but Harry knew there was a phone there. He ran to the house and went in and called the doctor, but the time one arrived, it was too late. Mike was missed by friends and the trolley crews for a long time after that unusual race.
So the conclusion is there were idiots then, just like
there are now. Yep. Yeah, you have to admit there were. This is from an article that's called Fair Week in Orleans County. Low gondolas were rented from the B.R.P. and the New York Central Railroad and used to haul sweet corn to the canneries in Albion and Medina. Swept out and cleaned, gondolas filled with people were also pulled by Freight Motor 302 to the Orleans County Fair at Albion from Medina and roadside stops. They stood up in the cars as it was a short ride. The company hadn't enough passengers to handle the crowds. They also rented wooden coaches from the BR&P Railroad, and all available trolley cars were used. Some 25,000 visited Albion during the fair week in the early years before automobiles and paved roads took the business from the inner urbans. So once the cars and trucks were available, the trolleys weren't so necessary. Conductor Harmer arrived in Albion one Saturday afternoon after a string of 3 empty flats, and his motorman stopped the freight back of a passenger trolley near the circus grounds. Barnum and Bailey's circus had just ended the afternoon show, and the crowd soon realized all couldn't get aboard the one passenger car, and soon many were climbing onto the flatbeds. Harry and his motorman delivered a car of people that afternoon, all along the line at roadside stops and villages on their way east to the Lyle Avenue car barns. Harry wasn't in uniform, so no fares were collected. All were deadheads. So they rode free of charge. I found this list, which is sort of obvious, but it's a list of stations on the BL&R public timetable, 1909. This is where they stopped: Lockport, Gasport, Middleport, Medina, Knowlesville, Albion, Hulberton, Holly, Brockport, Adams Basin, Spencerport, and Rochester. So you hit all the main areas.
Those were the scheduled stops.
Right, they were the schedule. It doesn't include others short stops.
There was a shanty at each crossroad, a 3-sided building that people could wait in and then wait down the trolley.
So if they couldn't get to the main hub, they had a place where they could fly. Yeah.
Roger's grandmother would go down our road.
Oh.
And take the trolley to Lockport. I
Uh-huh.
don't know what year, but she would go to Lockport.
So she probably was at one of those. Yeah.
More than one would stop.
Yeah. How about that? Now this is something I still haven't got completely in my head, but the trolley, Edgar Tousley, formerly of Albion, now Jamestown, has invented a new trolley wheel for electrical streetcars and applied for a patent for the same. The new wheel has been given practical tests and proved its unusualness and practicability. A company has been formed for its manufacture. This was in 1892. Bill, do you know what that was? I don't know how. This is 1890s. I mean, it's very early. And it was, they talk about electrical connections to the trolley.
To the cable. There's a wheel ran on the cable.
Right, but the electricity was from where? Was it
Well,
for lights initially?
Generating hydro power and water port in 88, but I think the power for the trolley system came from west.
From west.
They had to transform it. There were transformer houses to transform the power.
So that's where their electric came from, you think?
Yes, not local.
Was it coming from Niagara Falls?
Yeah,
Yeah, the hydraulic.
it came down and had, there was a transformer house at the corner of 31 and Culvert Road, and there was a transformer house on the end of East State Street here in Albion. It was torn down a few years ago.
Yeah. Okay, because I wasn't sure the way it said where the electric necessarily came from. But
It came from Niagara Falls.
yeah, but there were lines apparently they could connect to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The experiment of towing boats by tugs through the canal has proved a success, and more tugboats will be put on next season. These in turn may be supplanted by one of the devices now under consideration, such as the caution of a trolley line on the towpath, the power to be furnished from electric plants along the canal. So they were talking about electricity being provided there. This is Orleans Republican, September 17th, 1902. Albion White Company of New York, who have the contract for building the State Street trolley line, started work this week under the direction of Mr. Johnson, the surveyor who has been directing operations here the past season. The start is made at the east end of East State Street, and on that highway the road will run to the south side of the street. Material for the work of construction arrived here last week, and it's intended to build the village line complete this season. At a meeting held before Highway Commissioner Simpson last Thursday for a franchise on the town highways from East State Street to the secondary franchise was granted. The only opposition to the grant came from a representative of the rival company, which had been working here on the Bank Street franchise. But this opposition was withdrawn after the protester Beck understood the alternative. The hearing before the city fathers for the Bank Street franchise, fixed for the 11th, was adjourned for 3 weeks. So there was a lot of controversy about who was going to be in charge of what and who was going to finance what. And so they had numerous meetings. The construction of the east and west trolley line will be a blessing in Albion in other ways than the advantage it will offer for travel. It will have a positive effect in releasing freight and express rates. As we well know, the Central cuts the local freight rates during the period of canal navigation because it enters into competition with the canal packet lines. So the charges went down when the canal was working because they were running competition with the canal. The end will be made permanent when the electric railway gets into operation. The rates for the express small parcels for the trolley line will cater for this business and capture lots of it. So the competition there apparently between the canal and the trolley line was the canal had been used to transport things. Buffalo, Rochester. Now you got this upstart trolley company coming in and want to take your business. So the canal reduced their rates to take some of that away from this new trolley line that became a railway. So there was competition there too. There was an article June 1st, 1933 in the Medina Tribune that says, "Let's take a trolley ride someday soon." So that was kind of the nostalgia of getting on the trolley, because this is 1933. We've got cars, we've got railways, but this was a come on to read the article. Let's take a trolley ride sometime soon. Also in Medina in 1917, the Medina Tribune, representatives of 90% of the New York trolley companies are in favor of a 6-cent fee. They were going to a rich boy. Money in their pocket. On March 1918, from 7 in the morning till 1, the trolley going east and going west left every hour. So you had to be right there if you wanted to get a ride. They were going every hour. This one was in the paper that Albion man killed at crossing by trolley. Joseph Irwin, 37, of Albion, was killed instantly Saturday afternoon when struck by a trolley car at the Rochester, Lockport, and Buffalo Railway Company. The accident occurred shortly before 4 o'clock at the Butts Road crossing in the eastern end of Albion. Irwin was walking and apparently did not hear the westbound limited car approaching. Fred Hudson of Albion was motorman, and A.N. McLeese, also of this village, was conductor on the car. So probably they were known. He was known to them. I thought I'd end with a few quotes of people. That we have the interviews that were done in the 70s, Oral History Project, done by the Orleans County Historical Association. And some people were questioned about the trolley, if they remembered the trolley. And this one is Clyde Arling. He says, I walked 1.5 miles to the Transit Road trolley stop. This trolley was an electric car that ran about every hour between Rochester and Lockport and traveled very fast. Therefore, many people were killed and injured at the crossings. They could stop at all roads to pick up and discharge passengers. The fare was 12 cents from Transit Road to Albion, and if you knew the conductor real well, he might let you ride once in a while for nothing, and then you could use that money to buy jelly donuts. I love that remembrance. That sounds like somebody. Kids would be, yeah, if I don't have to spend the money, then I can get a treat. Yeah, so donut. This one is Stuart Case of Medina. I don't remember what my dad done at that time. At one time he worked on the Rochester Eastern. Was that the trolley? A trolley line that went from Rochester to Syracuse. And he was a conductor on that line. Can't remember too much. His name was Burritt. Everyone called him Bert. Bert Case. Let's back up a little bit here. Your father came here in 1906, you said. No, 1907. Okay, 1907. He was a motorman on the Brockport, Lockport, and Rochester trolley line. They called it that at the time when it opened. They called it the BL and R. Later changed it to RL and B, Rochester, Lockport, and Buffalo. Buffalo, Lockport, and Rochester, and they changed it to Rochester, Lockport, and Buffalo. Well, I had one uncle that was a conductor, and he was a conductor and lived in Rochester. And the younger one, I think he run the initial line that opened it. It was run from Brockport into Rochester, and I think he stayed with the line. Why I know he stayed longer, my dad did. He, like my dad, I think my dad was the first one. He quit and opened a restaurant in Medina. So his dad worked on the line, but then he quit and opened a restaurant. Just what was the differences between the motorman and the conductor? Well, just that the motorman operated the car and the conductor took care of the passengers and selling and collecting tickets. So that was the difference between the two. They had a wheel that run on overhead line that they got their power from, and if they wanted to, sometimes like on the trolley line, used to come into East Center Street and turn right at the Four Corners, and some of them sharp turns like at the Four Corners, the trolley wheel would slip off from the wire, and they had to go out and fasten it back up. And then later years, they replaced the trolley wheels with what they called a shoe. And them shoes sometimes didn't last too long, I guess especially at high speed. They burned them out. And the motormen used to have to climb up on the back of the car and replace them. I think they used to have a telephone system. They'd carry portable phones for an extra, and also they used to have phones on I don't know whether it was every 5 miles on a pole on a line, and they used to have to stop and get their orders. So that train would stop every so many miles so they could use the phone that was on the pole to find out what they were supposed to do next. Now when this trolley line went through Medina coming in, let's say from Albion, the trolley track was along East Center, and then it went up to the Four Corners and turned right, north in other words, on Main Street, and then where did it go? Came in East Center, turned at the Four Corners, and went down Commercial to a little beyond Ohio Street, and then it cut across and went down just on the right along Salt Road on the west. And then it paralleled the Salt Road there at a short distance, and then it got to the railroad track. Of course, it turned west to Middleport. So they talk about the distance. I guess they had some bad accidents sometimes on the trolley. Your father was involved with one. Do you remember about that? I don't remember too much about it, only that one of the cars was supposed to wait at a siding for his car, and it didn't, and they came head on, and my dad seen him coming, and he hollered back into the car for people to stay in their seats, and he jumped out and got a sprained ankle. That was all that happened to him. And there was a man in the car that, I don't know, they thought he was going to get out before it happened or what, but he was walking along the back of the car, and the crash threw him up to the ceiling and killed him. And I don't think there were too many other injuries other than that. The cars just telescoped. They talk about a book that I have on the railroad. It mentions a McAllister family getting killed, but it didn't say where or how many was in the family. They were in an automobile, I guess, weren't they? And it was a crash with a trolley. Well, I don't remember that. Then once or several times when you were small, you got to ride on the trolleys once in a while. Well, we used to ride in the cab mostly. We rode quite a bit. Of course, my two uncles were conductors, and we rode quite a bit with them. And then there was a couple of motormen that my dad was quite friendly with. One of them was John Deeger, that used to live on Church Street in Medina. And we used to ride with him a lot, and I can remember he was a big husky man. And when we were on riding with him, he'd hold us out the window so that my dad coming towards him in his car would see us and know we were there, and they'd stop and change us from one car to another. Okay. Held them out the window so Dad could see them. I guess they did things that we probably wouldn't do today. The fares started out at about 2 cents a mile, and I know they increased to 3 cents, and I don't know how high they did get. I never paid fare much. The only time I ever got paid fare on the line that I can remember, the day or so before we were taking off for Florida, I had a car. I bought my first car when I was 18, bought a 1912 Ford in 1921. And I had a friend that used to live in Medina, and they had moved down to Fancher on the Ridge, north of Fancher on the Ridge, on a farm. They had a great big barn there. I took my car down there to store it while I was in Florida, and he brought me back to Fancher to catch the trolley back to Medina. And my uncle was the conductor, and instead of telling him, he didn't recognize me, and I didn't tell him who I was, and I paid my fare and never told him who I was. If I told him who I was, I wouldn't have had have to pay any fare if his uncle had recognized him. So they were quite adventurous on this trolley line. And I think it's interesting to hear the stories, and I'm so glad that Orleans County Historical did interviews with people who remembered the trolley and had stories about it. So, anybody have any questions?
I remember when I was young, it's the 60s and 70s, my grandmother said, the trains always run on time. Well, I had never, in my adult life, got on a train that ran on time.
Yeah, well, even airplanes don't run on time. We get on an airplane and it's supposed to leave at 2 o'clock, and then 20 after 2, you're still sitting on the runway.
Yeah. It's like you finally get going.
You get the general timeline, but
We had a problem in Medina getting the right of way through Medina. What you're telling me that the trolley tracks came up to the four corners from the east on East Center Street and then made a right angle turn.
yeah,
Well, that was because people were rich people who lived on West Center
Didn't want it.
Street in fancy mansions,
Yeah.
didn't want the trolley rumbling by their fancy homes.
Yep.
So they got up a petition, and they made the trolley company go down Main Street, Commercial Street, And it was just fine if the trolley ran behind working class people.
Yeah, but you didn't want it,
South side of the canal.
you didn't want it on the rich side.
So it was way out of the way to go that way around to get the salt road.
Yeah, it's crazy. But, you know, that was the feeling at the time, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, the only stories I heard from, I think from my father, were the putting coins on the track of the trolley.
Oh, yeah.
My dad grew up on Academy, one of the Academy's streets, and I know, and I don't think they derailed it.
No.
Flat.
But they flattened it.
I think,
Yes.
yeah, kids, I remember those.
You could prove you did it because the coin was flattened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to figure out is, for the most part, I hear where it went in Medina, and I know it was on State Street in Albion, but for the most part, was it pretty much near the railroad tracks or the canal?
One crosswalks.
So it just kind of meandered.
There's still a trolley bridge that you can cross. It's on annexed land. It's crosses Otter Creek. You can't see it from the Albion Eagle Harbor Road, but it's south of Albion Eagle Harbor Road. Otter Creek sort of meanders and there's a lot of trees. I have driven across it. Panics drive across it. It's a deep cavern there. It's built up with earth, and down at the bottom of this earth bridge, there's a concrete culvert. But they drive farm equipment across this where the trolley
Still use it, yeah.
or Otter Creek.
Yeah.
And then it meandered kind of in a southwesterly direction and would have crossed the Eagle Harbor West Berry Road about halfway between the canal and the railroad.
So it wasn't a straight thing. like-
No,
Yeah.
it zigzagged
Yeah,
through.
okay.
Went off
Yeah.
the farmland.
Wherever they could get the right.
Where they could get the right of way or where they
And
could.
that section of Route 31 from Culvert Road to East Center Street in Medina, that section of Route 31 was the roadbed for the BL&R trolley.
Mhm.
So after the trolley ceased, gave up the right of way, and when the state put in Route 31 in the early 1930s, they used the former roadbed.
Yeah, so, no, you have this vision that it goes straight,
Right.
through.
Yeah.
but it doesn't. Where they could get permission to do it.
Yeah.
And some places would not give them permission to go through, so they had to find a zigzag to go around.
What about eminent domain, or did that happen? for
No,
this?
not really. But mostly they had to have permission, and the land was all owned by individuals.
Sure.
You know, unless they ran into a factory location or something, but 90% of the land was owned by individuals. So if they didn't get your permission, they had to find another way to go around. Yeah. So, because I had this vision of it going straight through too.
Yeah.
And then the more I read, the more I found it was going over here and up around it.
Actually, I'm embarrassed to admit that I heard the stories from my dad, and all I thought about was the part that was on State Street. I never even thought about it.
But it going farther than that.
It went to Rochester or Lockport.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
So
So now, canal was the first track they all through. So had they already gone off before the trolley came in, or?
No, the canal started to die out a little bit once you got railroad tracks going, because they could go and carry cars worth of produce or farm products or whatever. And it gave the canal a competition of who could get there faster and haul how much. So the canal got some competition from the new way to travel, which was the railway. And the railway got competition from the thruway, where people could get on with their tractor trailers and their cars and wagons and take off and go straight and didn't have to go through any villages.
But when you talk about the railway now, that's the trolley? What goes-
They overlapped. The trolley was first here, a way to get through Albion, and it expanded towards Rochester, expanded towards Buffalo. And then they got more railway rather than just the local trolley.
And that went
Yeah.
straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when went from the canal to the trolley, what was the difference? I know you said from the horse and buggy to the canal was a big difference in
Yeah.
price and time. So how was it from the canal to the trolley?
Well, the trolley, railroad trolley became railroad. You had straight through,
Oh,
and you didn't have the water in the boats to contend with, and the railway could go straight down through where the canal didn't go. The canal went kind of above, and
oh,
where you had the train tracks would connect bigger villages like Rochester and Buffalo and Lockport and Fairport, and so you got more of the business areas directly connected. It was just the new way to transport things.
yeah.
At what point did it transition from electric to however they ran?
It was as electricity became popular.
But then
It's-
transitioned, well, look, they're run by what now?
Well, by engines,
Coal, gas.
and,
Wood in the beginning.
yeah, wood in the beginning,
Wood,
And coal.
then coal.
yeah,
Okay.
and eventually electricity was
Yeah.
built. Yeah. Did
So
you want to
electricity
come?
started.
Yes. Back in the day, the trolley used to come through Spencer.
Uh-huh.
And back, not back, now, Spencerport has a museum that you can go into, and it is one of the original trolley stops.
Trolley stops.
And it's been updated, obviously,
Yes.
because when the trolley went out, a gentleman came and he bought the building. And he moved it up the street, I'll say a quarter of a mile. And he converted it into his home. And once he passed away, the owner of what was called then Ogden Telephone, bought it and came to the town, and she said, would you like to own this? And the town, they're thinking, okay, hang on to your shorts because somebody's going to try to sell us something and it's going to cost us an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And when they said that, and they were sitting there, she said, no, all I want is $2. You have 2 years to get it off my property. And so they came and they lifted it up and put it on a flatbed truck and brought it down what's now West Avenue and down. In the meantime, there was those that were doing reconstruction, and they literally had it propped up on cinder blocks. So the cinder blocks are all the way around, and it now sits on top. And it's been, you can see a lot of stuff from the old days, because it sits right along the canal. But there are pictures that when you walk in, and you see the story of the building, and you go, oh my God. You know, I mean, you know, and there's so much history there that you see for whether it's lanterns or anything to do with whether it's Trolley or on the canal. It's all in there. And the best, I'll complete this story, the best part is the museum is usually open from, I'll say, May through October. And just like Medina and Albion, there are docks along the canal. The main difference is a boat comes in, docks in front of the museum. They go out and they hook up the electric and all the other amenities that they want. They can stay there for 3 days and there's no charging, which is a big draw for. And imagine this: you're a boater and you dock. I'll pick on since I'm in Albion, I'll pick on Albion. And you dock there and you go, where is the closest grocery store? Well, it's only 2 miles up the road. Oh, thanks. But in Spencerport, they dock there, they get off the boat and cross over past restaurants, coffee shops, ice cream shops, and there's a top sitting there. And so to them, that's like, oh my God, I died and gone to heaven, you know. But each and every town has its own amenities and everything like that.
Yep.
And I mean, you know, I'm only blabbing about Spencerport because that's where I live close to, and I volunteer at the museum, but so I know just a little bit about it.
Yeah. No,
But it's absolutely gorgeous and a lot of times we just take the train tracks, the trolley tracks, or the canal, and oh wow, we see them all the time.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's been there forever.
But to go down and park on Main Street down there and walk along the canal or across the bridges and you go, oh man, this is fantastic to be able to do that. And the best part is the number of people that literally drive up, stop, get their bikes off, or the new moms that get out of their cars and put their kids in the strollers and take them up and down the canal, you know, and then after they're done, they cross and they go, hey, there's a coffee shop over there.
Yeah.
There's a little ice cream shop or a little place where I can get a burger and fries or something, you know, and how that helps up in, you know, whether you're Medina, Albion, Poly, Rockport, it doesn't matter.
Most of them don't have any place you can go to the bathroom, let alone get anything to eat.
Yeah, Spencerport has a lot of things very close to the canal.
Yeah.
My parents lived in Spencerport, and that their business follows the canal. It really does.
And you know,
more than most villages do.
You know, but you think about it. Look out here at this main drag, and how many cars are going up and down, up and down, up and down, and you go, wow. But you take out that bridge down there, you go, oh no, I ain't going down in Albion. There ain't no way I'm trying to figure out anything else for that.
And still now, if you follow somebody down from the ridge, they put their turning signal on and then they go, oh, and they turn it off and go straight ahead.
It's just crazy.
Yep. Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.